This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about Traffic from the year 2000, directed by Steven Soderbergh. The film's tagline, "No one gets away clean." And the...
Is that really what it is?
Yeah, it's one of them anyway. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the synopsis from Letterboxd. An exploration of the United States of America's war on drugs from multiple perspectives. For the new head of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, the war becomes personal when he discovers his well-educated daughter is abusing cocaine within their comfortable suburban home. In Mexico, a flawed but noble policeman agrees to testify against a powerful general in league with a cartel. And in San Diego, a drug kingpin's sheltered trophy wife must learn her husband's ruthless business after he's arrested, endangering her luxurious lifestyle.
Is it really luxurious? Is that like a plot point?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, they got a pool.
Yeah, but it's like never actually shown that like
she gets to have like martinis with her friends at lunch while her kid golfs. I mean,
when they joke about fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah.
And the doctor said I could have one glass of wine, but I had two.
Glug 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 glug.
Did you find that weird, or is that just me? Is that just suburban housewife stuff?
Yeah, I think so.
Or not suburban, I guess. High class?
I don't know. RJ. It's a different world.
Okay, anyways.
So Traffic. Okay, so Traffic is a movie. I think it is the first movie that we've watched in the Criterion Collection that I saw in theater when it actually came out. Way back in the day.
Did you not see Grand Illusion in theaters?
No, unfortunately. I, despite the fact that I'm 80 years old, I did not see Grand Illusion in theater.
You're pretty old, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, I did see Traffic when you were, what, 10?
Yes,
yeah.
I was 10 years old.
Yeah. So this movie, I'm sure, was on your radar. You heard like Ebert giving it 4 stars. It's big Oscar nomination.
It's definitely on my radar. I've owned it for like 6 years, but I've never watched it before.
Well, there you go.
How's that for being on your radar?
Big time. Big time. How about that? So for the one thing I've been neglecting to do the last several weeks that I want to do is to talk first about the DVD cover or Blu-ray. I'm not sure if it came out on Blu-ray. Do you have the Blu-ray or DVD, RJ?
I do have the Blu-ray.
Ooh, nice. So
it is the poster from Letterboxd is the Blu-ray cover.
Yeah, the silhouetted figure,
floating heads.
Yeah, not that cover.
It's like floating heads with a platoon style man in the middle of it. Whatever the Letterboxd cover is, that's my Blu-ray cover.
Oh, is it not Criterion then?
No, I own a non-Criterion version of Traffic.
Oh, well, the Criterion cover is a bit nicer.
Okay, good.
Than the headshot cover.
Mm-hmm.
With this man, this kind of silhouetted figure being like seemingly gunned down over this like hazy, rusty golden, desaturated image.
Yeah, that's on the Blu-ray too. It's just there's talking or floating heads above that thing.
I see. Yeah. So this one takes out the heads.
Okay.
So it's
nice.
Less dumb, I guess. Because I don't know, something about floating heads and like saying, "Hey, Michael Douglas is in this movie. Check it out." Can
I interrupt you for a second?
Yo.
On Amazon, when you look at Traffic Criterion, the information is completely wrong. For actors, so it's Traffic Criterion Collection Blu-ray. The picture is right. All the pictures are right. For actors, it says Caitlin Maloney, Fran Allgood, and then director Bruce Nash. And when you click on Bruce Nash, it goes to Adventures of Pluto Nash with Eddie Murphy, Rizzoli and Isles, the complete 7th and final season, The Man from Snowy River, Dinosaur from 2000, Armageddon from 1998 starring Rick Simpson. What the fuck? What is going on here? None of these add up. Encino Man starring George Stokes.
You've gone down to the dark web, I think.
None of this adds up, Jarrett. None of this adds. So I think Amazon's having some major technical difficulties right now. That Jeff Bezos is full of shit. Anyways, I was just looking and I found that quite bizarre.
So
So
this cover, RJ.
Traffic. What about the cover?
It alludes to this movie's, you could say, like, ambiguous view of the war on drugs, America's war on drugs. So I'd seen this movie before. I saw it a few times. I remember seeing this in theater and picking up the Criterion DVD because at the time I was like, oh, cool. And it was like cheap. And it's loaded with special features. Really harkens back to the day when DVDs were just like loaded with like, I think this has like 3 commentary tracks, like 25 deleted scenes, making of everything you could spring for. And I remember watching this movie at least once or twice back then, but since then I have not seen this movie. And going into it this week, I was like kind of like, oh man, I have no idea what I'm going to think about this. Watching it nowadays,
Sure.
like, because it's like this is like feels like a throwback to a different time. In fact, it when you're looking at this on Wikipedia, one of the like kind of like subcategories this links to is something called hyperlink cinema. And
what does that mean?
Well, it's these movies that have like multiple character storylines happening simultaneously. So like Pulp Fiction would be kind of an example of it. But for me, this movie gets more grouped into like the Babels, the Syrianas, these movies that like they're about real world geopolitical what have yous. Really, they're issue movies.
I would also throw Crash into that mix.
Oh, 100%.
And even more like just like interconnected different people stories from different geographical locations and different cultures, but hey, we're all dealing with the same shit, man. That's Crash, that's Babel, and then apparently Traffic started it all.
Well,
or maybe not all, but
it helped pave the way, because I mean Robert Altman was doing these sort of movies like forever, like Nashville is like this type of idea of like multiple storylines and like shortcuts and stuff like that. It's old hat. Lots of movies were like this, but it seemed like they started getting like kind of funneled down into that, and like Traffic might have like kind of kicked that off, and then it climaxed with Crash. Ugh. Yeah.
Ew.
So anyway, I went into this kind of like, oh no, and also like in general, like I feel like Steven Soderbergh's star has sunk over time. Like he kind of retired, and then he's like completely gone back out of retirement and just continued making movies like Unsane.
Well, that and even that Logan Lucky or whatever that fucking thing was, like when it came out, wasn't there a weird thing like either he never said he directed it, or whoever wrote it is his wife, but on the film was credited to different people, and everyone was really confused. It's like, why didn't they just say it was them? Why did they try to hide it?
I don't know. That's a Soderbergh move. When you look over his filmography, he's got lots of like weird stuff up his sleeve. Like he just springs movies on there. He's like kind of like how Trent Reznor just like makes stuff and then says, "Hey, I'm going to put it online for free." It's one of those types of things where he's like, I'm playing by my own rules. Anyways, so I'm pretty sure this is going to be the first and last film that we watch that has Orrin Hatch show up. If you're familiar with Orrin Hatch, Senator of Utah, Republican, he pops up here for a cameo. There's that scene when Michael Douglas goes to some gala in Washington, and
like an actual.
And yeah. There's several actual politicians that they actually got to come in, and they actually shot scenes with some random extras, and then they actually got like 4 or 5 people to come in and actually do scenes as themselves, but with uncredited. It's an odd thing.
I think Louie Guzman is more impressive than actual senators.
100%, he is more impressive than Orrin Hatch. So here we have Louie Guzman, Benicio del Toro, and Don Cheadle joining the Criterion Collection. We are still waiting for Don Cheadle to return, because we will be seeing Benicio and Louise again.
Is Boogie Nights not in the Criterion?
Not yet.
You
know what? There's a pretty good chance that it's coming, because those New Line Cinema Platinum Series DVDs, like with Bamboozle's coming, there's a pretty good chance that Boogie Nights is coming in. And the original, I think like I can't remember if the Laserdisc was, but I remember like P.T. Anderson was like all about like he put color bars in the one DVD or the back when the special edition DVD came out. He was like very adamant about putting color bars on there just because I love the Criterion Collection so much. So,
Louie Guzman's coming back.
Oh yeah, he is
for several movies.
And Benicio is going to be there in Fear and Loathing in like a little while.
Well, I mean, he'll be there, but the big thing is that Louie Guzman is going to be back for Anger Management, that hit Adam Sandler movie from 2003.
Of course.
He's in a lot of movies. Yeah. Fuck.
So not only, RJ, is this a contemporary film, it's the first Steven Soderbergh film. There'll be more of those as time goes on. But this movie is pretty star-studded. We got Michael Douglas, Catherine Zeta-Jones, who were just recently married at that time when this movie came out. We got Topher Grace, Dennis Quaid, Albert himself, Miguel Ferrer, John Slattery of Mad Men fame. Just a guy here.
There's also like some of my main dudes like Albert Finney. I love that guy. Josh Brolin's dad.
Yeah, James Brolin. Yeah.
Clifton Collins Jr. Has an appearance. He's big now. He's like isn't he in a lot of like Tarantino movies now? No, that's not right. He's a big actor now, though. People seem to be real hot on him. You got a guest appearance from Benjamin Bratt from Miss Congeniality. Mm-hmm. All sorts of people, Jarrett.
Yeah, so this is like a kind of a big movie, like for a contemporary modern movie in Criterion. This is like got to be like one of the most.
How many Oscars did it win?
It's a good question.
My Blu-ray says 4.
Yeah, but it didn't win the big enchilada though.
It got director, screenplay, editing, and supporting actor for Benicio.
And this isn't the first movie that's won those Best Picture accolades, because there was like historical ones that have got it at that point. But at the time, this was kind of like their first real, I feel like kind of like one of their big stabs at like kind of a mainstream-y movie to get their name out there. And in like a couple months, we'll be talking about Royal Tenenbaums, which was like kind of like another one of those movies. And actually next week, George Washington, that was another movie from 2000. But anyway, RJ, what did I think of Traffic this time out?
That's a good question. You tell me what you thought about Traffic this time out.
I thought this movie held up pretty darn well. I was actually really impressed with a lot of stuff in this movie. Just like the pacing, the editing. I was like very fearful that the politics and like kind of like writing of the dialogue would be really dated, the way that like some of this political stuff goes. But I kind of forgot that Steven Soderbergh was really aware of that sort of stuff, and so he was referencing like the Alan Pakula school of like making these sort of movies, like All the President's Men and Clute and stuff like that. He wanted to make a movie that was like a timeless political thriller.
Did you say the Scott Bakula political thriller?
Nope. Sure didn't. But he wanted to make something like, and this is like David Fincher kind of did the same thing with Zodiac, and he like where they wanted to make something that's like, hey, let's not pander to the audience too much, and like kind of just like present these things and like kind of be real gritty about it. And I think it comes off okay. It comes off like, again, much better than I was like afraid that it would be, because nowadays it seems like when these same types of movies get made, they're like unbearably sanctimonious. So to go along with all this conversation, before I watched this, I watched the original BBC miniseries Traffic with a K. That this is based on, from 1989. It's 6 episodes, about 50 minutes to an hour a piece. They're all on YouTube, and so I thought, you know what, maybe I should watch this thing because I've never seen it before. I remember it got released on DVD back when this came out, and it was like the TV series behind the movie. And I was actually surprised when I was watching the movie, just like how much of the source material of this miniseries got brought over. The biggest change is obviously that this Traffic with a K is more Eurocentric. Instead of Mexico, you have Pakistan, and like you have Afghanistan. And about the heroin trade specifically. And there's like cop characters. There's the rich housewife whose husband's the drug dealer who's been arrested. The one character that kind of gets eliminated from the Soderbergh version is there's no farmer character. There's no like
growing the drugs.
Yeah, like
that would have been nice.
Well,
a
so
nice touch,
yeah,
actually.
what's really that character actually is really interesting because he is like fucked. That character, like he is just so hosed over in this because the whole idea that in this film is that you have Afghanistan who live in this arid area. They're growing crops, and one of the cheapest, fastest, like effective drugs that a farmer can grow in this part of the world is opium. You can make a ton of money and you can grow it fast and it doesn't cost as much to do it. But obviously, the West, which is going through its drug crisis, is like, no, quit making this stuff and you should instead make good crops, but that no one wants to pay fair market value
Make
for.
corn.
Make things that you don't make as much money off of because it benefits us. Don't you think about the people these are harming? And it's just like, yeah, I guess, but at the same time, these people are trying to make a living, and like they're not drug addicts and they're making this stuff. What's wrong with you people? And so you get to follow this character who's like having to deal with a government who like cracks down on the crops being grown, and you get to see his like journey to like make a living for his family, going to the city, winding up working for one of these heroin dealers who is sending their product out into the rest of the world. And he winds up in jail, and then his wife winds up having to like smuggle drugs into London the old-fashioned way of swallowing balloons and with her kids, and she overdoses and dies. And it's just like, oh, this is it's something that when I was like watching Traffic, I'm like, doesn't this happen in this movie? No, it doesn't. So I have no idea. It's some
Maybe
other.
it did, but it was cut out.
It's some other things, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, that whole timeline of like the poorest part of the like totem pole, I guess, is the like the farmer or whatever. That story is left out, and they're kind of compressed all into a Benicio's story with his partner, where you get like kind of that end of the story. That's like who gets to be the stand-in for I guess like the Brown perspective of like not
what? Sorry?
The Brown perspective. The not Michael Douglas and his daughter, Catherine Zeta-Jones, the cops and stuff like that. Because I guess you get Louie Guzman and Don Cheadle who are making jokes about the fact that they're like, yeah, we'll make these white guys pay. So anyway, yeah. Speaking of Benicio del Toro, I love his Mexican clothing, his style. Lots of
polo shirts like tucked into jeans.
Yeah, t-shirts, sleeveless shirts, swinging baseball bats around, bashing up dudes.
I wonder if would you think that maybe this inspired his role in Sicario, that hit movie from 20-something.
Well, the less said about Taylor Sheridan's Sicario, the better.
The better? What about Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado?
I don't even know what that movie's about.
I just know that video of Benicio del Toro where he's shooting the gun and he's just like wiggling his finger back and forth. Have you seen that? It is the most bizarre shit. So it's like the handle here and he's got his finger straight through and he just goes like back and forth. Like, what is that? That's not an effective way to shoot a gun.
Fascinating.
I'm going to find this GIF. I'm going to post it on our Facebook. No. Fuck you, Jarrett.
Okay, so anyway, the BBC miniseries, very good. It starts off like there's some real howler lines of dialogue, the stuff I was afraid would show up in Traffic. But by the end of it, it's like grueling, dark, depressing stuff. And I was like, man, that was really good. And so, yeah, went into Traffic kind of like, let's see how it holds up. And it's like, yeah, no, the movie makes all the right decisions about like, hey, we have to take this like 6 hours of content and turn it into, I guess the first cut was like 3 hours and 10 minutes. And they came out with this 2.5 hour version. For me, this movie blew right by. So it was like a fantastic ride of like, oh, I love when like a movie that's like this well edited, well paced, that's like 2.5 hours, doesn't feel like it at all. And you're just kind of like caught up into the stories. You have the 4 stories. You got Michael Douglas rocking the white man haircut.
That's a good one.
Very political, in blue lighting, and in the story of his daughter, who's run afoul of Topher Grace, who's a degenerate drug addict, drug user, I guess.
Hey, you got to be real careful with the kind of language you're using here. You're going to offend an entire class of people.
Our drug addicted listeners.
Well, the person who emailed in the front of the show, I think they might have issue with your derogatory slang against them.
All right. So you have that bit. Then you have Catherine Zeta-Jones dealing with problems. Dennis Quaid rubbing up against her. It's not as well. It's not as sleazy though as the BBC series where like the lawyer friend, he actually does have sex with the housewife and is like completely taking advantage of the situation. But then he is horribly murdered, and you get to see it. Unlike here in the American safe version.
You think this one plays it safe more?
Yeah, oh, definitely. There's like nothing. There's like actually. Thinking on it, there's no real like crazy hideous violence. It's fairly palatable. Most of it's like
Louie Guzman gets blown up real bad,
but it's all very much like artfully done with Cliff Martinez music ambiently playing over it all.
Cliff Martinez.
Yeah. Those are the main four stories, right? Benicio, I think, is the heart of this movie. I found his stuff was like really well grounded. But yeah, and like Don Cheadle and Louie Guzman, they're awesome to watch. You get like Miguel Ferrer gets to be like the ham-fisted guy, doling out the facts about how ineffective the war on drugs is, hitting hard. Here's one for you, RJ. Did you know that the U.S. continues to spend $50 billion a year in their fight against narcotics?
Is that the war on drugs?
Well, they don't call it that anymore.
$50 billion. It's okay. What is included in their fight? Is this like safe injection sites and like
we don't treat those things? No, yeah, exactly. So this is the thing. Watching the BBC miniseries, which was made in 1989, watching Traffic, which came out in 2000. Here we are, like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years after these movies have all come out, and we're like, oh, things have gotten worse.
Yeah.
Yep. And
it's like Miguel Ferrer said. He's like, what does it matter what you do?
We'll just throw more shit at the border.
Yeah.
And
he's like, your job is a joke.
This is like before the cartels really got like insane with the violence and the like, hey, let's hang journalists from overpasses with their guts hanging out. And the heads and the like mass graves. This is like before we get to Sicario darkness. But anyway, hey, Harrison Ford was supposed to play Michael Douglas's character at one point, and apparently there was a big like, well, you better have Harrison Ford in this movie or we're not making it. And
I don't think he would have been as good in this movie.
Oh, he's well, as I've said in the past, Harrison Ford's a horrible actor. So yeah, apparently he wanted to get back in touch with his action roots.
I think I would have preferred Kirk Douglas if he were alive at the time when this movie was filmed. I think he would have performed it a lot better with more poise and elegance, but he was taken too soon. So,
hey, RJ.
What?
After like 6-7 years of owning this movie on Blu-ray and not watching it, you got to watch it finally. And what did you think?
I did watch it finally. So I bought this, I believe. Remember when Blockbuster went out of business?
Yep.
I went and I made a killing because all of their like, I don't like germs, so I didn't buy any of those rental movies. I'm not an animal. But there were a few movies that were Blu-rays that I was like had my eye on for a long time. And it's like Traffic. I was like, that movie's supposed to be real good. Look at that poster. Look how edgy it is. I want to get that thing. So when Blockbuster went out of business, I think it was like $5 or something for like the Blu-ray, and I was like, I'm gonna buy that shit. So I got it, and then it sat on my shelf for however long ago Blockbuster went out of business, which I can only guess is 5-6 years ago. And I never had interest to watch it, to be honest. And then once we started doing the podcast, I was like, yeah, I'll watch it eventually. So I watched it. And I would say, Jarrett, that I am mostly on the side of it's good. I am also on the side of it's a little much for me. So as a person who never watched this ever and is coming to it 20 years later, there were a few things like I think what you said, your fears of certain things being a little heavy-handed or like over the top. I got a little bit of that. Mostly like I did like it. And there were a lot of things that I thought it did very well. There were just a few things that I was like, this is too much for me. The first thing, Jarrett, is when this movie starts and there's like a sepia tone like filter over the movie. I was like, what the fuck is this? I was really thrown off by it. I was like, what is this, Lars von Trier? Like the oranges or yellow in Mexico and then the blue in Washington. I was really put off by that at first. And I understand that a lot of people are like, it sounds like I just did a quick glance at like what people said about this movie, and a lot of people will be like, I know it's like it can come off jarring, but you get used to it. It's like I did get used to it, but I don't think I actually ever liked it.
No,
and I saw other people too who are like, oh, what a stylistic, like what a nice stamp of his style, and I don't really like that either.
Allegedly, my understanding though is so it was kind of a compromise of like how to kind of audience proof it. How to make it clear, because people are stupid, and they're going to get confused about what's happening, where people at, what's going on in this movie here, and so they're like, hey, well, here's a solution. We're going to color code the movie so people will know what's happening, and it's also like you can also allege that it's like, look, it's like a different world, and this like movie kicked off a trend of this where Mexico became yellow and orange for movies like from Once Upon a Time in Mexico to Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad did this constantly, and it's hilarious to me because it's like to this day it's like Mexico is yellow, and I'm like, I've seen photos of Mexico, like it's not yellow, it's like blue skies. But
they live in deserts, Jarrett.
Yeah, so in the popular, it's like, and same as like when you go to like foreign lands and deserts, it's they just color grade everything to look a particular way, and it's like, look, so you know where you're at. It's stylized, and color grading is probably one of the worst things, honestly, that's come along, and probably in cinema, and it's still hanging on. There's a time and place for it. There's a way to make something work because you want to achieve a look, rather than just like, we shot this poorly the first time, and now we got to like cover up the fact that otherwise it looks like a gray mass. So we're just going to make it yellow. And I mean, there was that element, like he was shooting, Soderbergh was shooting this with some cheap low-res cameras, because when you look at that Mexican footage, it's like grainy too, and so it's like,
is that intentional, or was it I
think it's the camera. I think it's the type of the way they were shooting, because they wanted to make it look gritty and like film stocky, and like because his references like for like films that he was looking at was like there's the movie Z, Battle of Algiers. He wanted to feel like it was like you were on the street as it's happening. That's why it's like kind of that handheld kind of grainy look. And then there's like the color grading thing is like, as I said, it's like the thing I think about when I think about Traffic is like Yellow Mexico, and that's where that's the movie where it began, I think. And I don't know. I'm not going to defend it. I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't know. I wouldn't want to make it. I don't know if he would do it that way again.
I understand where, like, it's like I said, whatever we were talking about before. It's like, for Spiderverse. Where it's like, I get why you can't just do this, because then you're going to lose a ton of money. So at the same time, I get why studios and production companies make certain decisions. It's like, we got to do this. People are fucking stupid. It's like, I get it. I do.
Well, hey, I mean, worldwide, this movie wound up making like $200 million. It's a pretty good.
There you go.
Pretty good return on $50 million. Rolling the dice on this drug drama. Yeah,
exactly. Like, so there you go. But my point of bringing it up was that 20 years later, a completely naive person, like I didn't even know what Traffic was about. I had no idea what this movie was about, because I just avoided it forever because I owned it, and I was like, I'll watch it eventually. So like whenever someone would talk about Traffic, I would just like completely disengage and just like drift away and be like, I don't care. So no, like when I was watching it, I was like, what is this shit? And then like there are times where I think he kind of like lets go of it, where there's certain scenes where it'll be like, say for Michael Douglas, it'll be blue to establish that you're in his world now, and then eventually they tone it down a little bit as the scene progresses, and I'm like, that's fine too, but I never had a hard time like following along. And I don't even think I saw in Letterboxd here they kind of described it as like 4 stories, but I wrote it down as like 6. You have the senator, you have the general, which is the cartel. Then you have the agents, which is Don Cheadle and Louie Guzman. And then you have the soldier, which is Benicio del Toro.
Well,
Then you have, yeah. And then you have The Family, which I thought was Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then you have The Addicts, which were the teenagers like Topher Grace and Erica Christensen.
But that kind of compresses in with Michael Douglas' story, right?
But I thought like each of them had individual stories, right? Like because Michael Douglas was the politician, but his daughter was the addict.
Yes,
and their stories go together, but they are separate stories at the same time
for a little bit until they're one story.
Yeah, I meant like their role in the drug thing. It's like you have a politician and then you have the actual user.
Well, so they have different character arcs, but I guess they're blue, RJ, so they're linked.
They're both blue. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's what I mean. Like they do cross, and that's that Babel crash bullshit where it's like, it's not bullshit. Like there are movies that do it well, and this movie does it well, but it's that I think with time, and then once it gets replicated so many other times, you're like, all right, like all these interconnecting stories. It's like, it's like maybe you don't need this like Benicio del Toro to pass Catherine Zeta-Jones on the streets of Mexico.
Yeah, that's
maybe you don't.
That's that cleverness.
Yeah, like maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe that's someone's favorite scene, which is fine too. If you like that, whatever. But when I was watching that, I was like, I don't know. Which brings me to my next point, Jarrett. Nobody needs Dennis Quaid.
What?
I'm taking a firm, hard stance. This is going to be Bill Paxton level of negativity here. I don't think we need Dennis Quaid. And frankly, I think we would be a better place without him. Because he serves zero purpose in this fucking movie other than to be a person who inhabits some space for a while, which is like his role in every movie. Other than I'll give him credit for one, other than maybe Dragonheart, which is probably his finest achievement. Other than Dragonheart, I don't think we need Dennis Quaid, Jarrett, and I'll be the first one to say it. So fuck him.
Who else is going to play Vince McMahon in the biopic?
Clifton Collins Jr.
Exactly. So there you go.
Yeah. So he's weird. What else do I got for it? I'm going to hit the negative stuff first, and then I'll tell you about stuff that I liked. I think some of the social commentary, accurate as it is, there were a few things that I thought came off a little heavy-handed. Mostly the Topher Grace character, where it was just like he was always waxing poetic and philosophical, and sometimes it's intentionally transparent, where you're like, this guy's full of shit. He has no idea what he's talking about. That's the point of him, and I get that. But then there's other moments where like when he's talking to Michael Douglas and he's like, he said something so bizarre.
It's his rant about
like if people are yelling at for drugs at black people.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what are you talking about?
Yeah, because he's talking out his ass, and then Michael Douglas just stares at him, and then he stops talking. That's the joke, RJ. Calm down.
Well, anyways,
yeah,
I thought even the inclusion of that, I was like, I don't know. So there are a few things like there's elements that I think that social commentary stuff comes out really well. There's certain parts of the movie that I think they do a good job with it. And then there's other parts where I was like, I'm not super on board with how you're portraying this aspect of that. But that's my own bias because I have my own opinions on things. Okay, here's what I'll get at, Jarrett. Here are the good things. I think this movie has a very good natural escalation, where each of these things is kind of building, and it doesn't feel like it's doing it so that you can get to a bigger part. It feels like it's doing it because that's what would happen. So that might sound vague and ambiguous, but like, let's say the addict girl, it's kind of like it kind of builds and it builds until she gets to a point where it's kind of out of control. Or with Benicio del Toro, he's playing a certain role, and then it gets to a next step, and then he's not as comfortable anymore, and it gets to a next step, and he's even less comfortable. So it builds and it builds. But again, it doesn't feel like they're doing it just for the sake of doing it. So I think this movie, like you said, it has a very good pacing, and even for the story itself, it has a very good natural progression. I really liked the sound design in this with the music. So when there's the shootout scenes, they really stole some Michael Mann techniques here, where they just kind of cut all other sound, and you just have the natural sounds of what's going on. I liked that. And then when the music does, or the score, whatever does come in, it seems fitting for the parts. So that's good. Benicio del Toro is very good. I think he's a little bit, his story is like a very important part of it. You kind of want to see more of him, but I think it's just because he does his role so well. It's very subdued, and like, I don't know. He holds a lot within, but I think he's just a very good actor where you can see what's going on, even though he doesn't like emote that much. But it's not that he's not acting, like, as you would say, Harrison Ford, who's the bad actor. I think Benicio del Toro's, it's very like it's very methodical in the way that he portrays this stuff. So he's very good. What else is there? You know what I thought was hilarious was when Topher Grace was, they were talking about all their parents, and it's like, your dad's a doctor, and he's like, no, he does this, and it's like, your dad's a doctor, and Topher Grace is like, yeah, he does research, and they're like, what kind of research? He's like, he's mapping the fucking pig genome. He's like, he can't help this like overdosing kid. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, like I do like I do like the way that the stories play out. The only thing that I think, and it's not even a knock against the movie, I think it's just about movies in general, is I think it's almost to the point, like, I never had a hard time keeping up with it, but it's almost to the point where it's too much for the time they have. Because from what I understand, this was like an over 3 hour long movie, and he cut it down to 220.
That's what I said.
Yeah, so that's
and they cut down that from a 6 hour miniseries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like and that's what I mean. It's not a knock against the movie itself as much as it is against movies, where it's like they tried to condense so much material into such a time frame that you do lose certain things where like there's characters who pop up, like, again, Dennis Quaid. He's in this thing for like a minute. It was like, why was he even in this at all? Why was it Dennis Quaid? Yeah.
Basically, well, that character is in the BBC miniseries, and it's for for Catherine Zeta-Jones to like bounce stuff off of. Like, I think there's like that sort of guidance because she has to figure this stuff out, and it's got to be done that way. So he's like he's a friend of he's a friend of her husband, and so he's the guy sticking around. That is why Dennis Quaid is there. That's
a good answer. Actually, you know what? I just thought that I actually did like quite a bit is that I like how it sets up stuff. And there's no resolution because the story continues, and like the point of it is that the story will continue no matter what. Where the best example I think of, like the very literal example, is when Don Cheadle goes and has like a fit in the drug dealer's house, and he plants the bug, because that's something that there's no resolution to it, but it's in the vein of the whole movie where it's like, yeah, this is an ongoing thing. It's like Michael Douglas. He's like, well, this is never going to end. Kind of.
Yeah.
So, no, it's I like Traffic. I think it's a good movie. There were certain things that kind of pulled me out of it a little bit, but I do like it. I think it's a good show.
I think the one that like is like the goofiest, and it's in both the miniseries and this, is Catherine Zeta-Jones like talking the like hardened assassin who never makes a mistake.
Out of nowhere.
Kill him! You gotta do it right now! And they're like, okay. Yeah. And it's always like, because it happens in both, and you're just kind of like, I feel like he'd be like, no, there'll be another time. We can do this another way. And they did. And it was like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. But like the character in the BBC miniseries, she's given like she's given a lot more scenes too. Like her, you really see everything tightening around her, whereas in this it's kind of like, oh, your bills are kind of running out offhand, and then some guy threatened to kill your kid. They like they do way more, like there's way more build to that, like where there's a guy who's like very nice and making threats about what's going to happen. And then it kind of builds up to her actually traveling to Pakistan and like basically trying to make a new deal with the other side, which they kind of do with the dolls, with the cocaine infused children's dolls. But then like he's like, okay, well the deal's going to be that you're going to smuggle drugs, and we're going to see if you have what it takes to do this. And then she does, but then there's like a fake out that she's like not crazy, and that she just had drugs that she's going to pretend are the ones that she smuggled, but she just threw them out immediately. And it's like, well, that's like a good beat, because it's like that's actually really smart, and not just like, oh man, because it creates all this false tension of her being searched, and you're like, oh my god. And then it turns out, oh, expectations misdirected. Brilliant. So that was like, that's a good thing. And they just like obviously did not have time to get that in this version, because you got to cut somewhere.
You gotta cut somewhere.
That's right. But it's so sad when my boy Louise goes down.
Yeah, it sucks, man. Is there? I'll pose this to you and anyone listening. Is there a less or a more likable guy in the world than Louie Guzman? There isn't. He is so adorable, and he's so sweet that if you don't like him, then there is a serious personal flaw to your character, I think. Do you know what I mean?
As a fan, I guess I have to agree.
You do have to agree. This is what I'm saying. But he's a very like wholesome guy. You just look at him and you're like, he makes me feel good. Look at him smile. Look at his happy demeanor. What a nice boy. I don't have a whole lot more to say, Jarrett. But
about that Salma Hayek cameo.
Oh, as wife number 1 or something.
As Floozy.
Floozy. Yeah, she there was actually something weird. She was like smoking her cigarette, and I thought she did it in a really weird way where it was like, I can't remember now, but there was something about that scene. I was like, why is she smoking like that? That's weird. I don't notice weird stuff, Jarrett. I have very, very real critiques of movies for very real reasons. It's not like very trivial, minute things that don't matter. Nobody ever said that.
No one.
Nobody. Yeah, Traffic's pretty cool. I like Traffic. I don't know if I'm doing it the service that people might want, as it is a big Hollywood movie. Is it the newest movie we've watched so far, or?
Well, In the Mood for Love came out the same year, and there was like,
okay,
there's like another, yeah, but it's like definitely we're like in a string of recent films here.
Well, I guess that's so. In the Mood for Love was the like the
Also
breaking point there.
Well, there was like Insomnia, which wasn't that old. There were some like 90s movies too.
I guess this is the newest North American Hollywood film.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
This is like the first big film since like I guess Armageddon or The Rock.
Right. Yeah.
But those don't like totally count.
Yeah, those are like novelty acts.
Yeah. Or Chasing Amy.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, there's been more, but again, those
your
those
trilogy.
Those are small movies though, really.
Yeah, compared to Armageddon was big. It didn't win 4 Oscars, but the Oscars are a joke anyways.
Well, yeah, as once again proven year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Hey RJ,
what?
You want to hear about who hates Traffic?
Sure, I'd be fine for that.
All right then, Sadie, 0.5 star. This is just bad.
Is that it?
That's it.
You know what I think is bad? Their 4-star review of Glass.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that movie's 4 stars, but they got 5-star movies here, Jarrett. They got The Devil Wears Prada. They got Nocturnal Animals, that movie people are always talking about. They got Notting Hill. They got Mamma Mia 2. Ant-Man and Wasp. San Junipero, that Black Mirror episode that everyone's really hot on, which is just like okay. Infinity War, 5 star. These are all 5 stars, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, I don't trust their opinion at all.
Matume, 1 star. Soderbergh loves to make films about things he has zero understanding of. His blind spots scream in this picture that pretends to have depth.
I don't know, because like I don't know anything about Mexican cartels, but it seemed like he had a good understanding of it.
Yeah, there's like one thing I read that was fair, like, because like there was a whole thing that they wrote a screenplay. There was a guy who actually wrote it, Steve Gagnon. He was approached because he had this screenplay called Havoc that was floating around, and they're like, "Hey,
I've seen that movie.
let's bring our resources together and let's do this thing." And so he started working on it, and they wrote a screenplay, and they actually ran it by some like DEA people and some government people, and they were like, "Yeah, some of this isn't right," and so they fixed it, and they had access, and they had people like legitimately in those positions at the border and stuff like that actually like be the people in the movie. So I don't know. It seems legit to me, but the one bit that is inaccurate is the line about when Michael Douglas asks, "Well, who's my equivalent in Mexico?" And they're like, "Well, you don't have one." Or they don't have one for you, and that's not true.
Yeah.
The drug czar position was created in Mexico in '96. So,
well, there you go.
but I guess it's like it adds to the whole, like, it's an alternate universe where like General Salazar, he is there to fill the boots.
Yeah.
As he slithers all his lines.
Yeah. Matume, all their 5-star movies are like Criterion, so that's not very.
Okay.
Doesn't say anything, but their half-star movies speak volumes. Jarrett, half a star to Vanilla Sky, half a star to Michael, the John Travolta Angel movie, half a star to Dunkirk, half a star to The Florida Project, half a star to Brick, half a star to I Am Sam, one of your favorite movies ever, half a star to $1 Million Baby, half a star to Kids by Harmony Korine.
What?
Half a star
Madness.
to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. What is this? What are you doing?
Those are some strong politics.
Strong politics indeed.
And finally, Brian Hetherington, 1 star. When this movie wasn't busy boring the shit out of me, it was annoying me with the cinematography and what felt like the exact same little bit of quasi-dramatic background music in every single scene. Although I liked the idea of the storylines, it was filled mostly with boring dialogue and drama-less acting. Also, couldn't stand the fact that the movie goes out with a touching scene based on an emotionless and barely coherent rant from halfway through. I guess he doesn't like that baseball diamond.
I thought that was fine. But Brian is from Winnipeg, Canada. Here's a weird thing, Jarrett. You know what they gave 5 stars to?
What?
Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom.
Huh.
That's a little weird, no?
It's a well-seen movie.
They only have 3 half-star movies. It's Doom, House of 1,000 Corpses, and Donnie Darko. And their 1-star movies are Traffic. Oh, okay, wait. Okay, so Traffic, Planet of the Apes to Tim Burton. That's a pretty bad movie. Hostel 3. I don't think I've seen that.
Neither have I.
But these are their other 1-star movies, Jarrett. So there's Traffic. There is The Machinist. There is Freddy Got Fingered, which is a pretty good show. There is The Life Aquatic of Steve Zissou. And then there is Brokeback Mountain. This is the weirdest collection of 1-star reviews I've ever seen.
That is pretty weird.
Well, whatever. That's why they live in Winnipeg, whoever this guy is. Am I right? Subtle Canadian shade being thrown at other provinces.
That's right. Winterpeg. Well, there you have it.
Yeah, we had nothing to follow that.
Nope.
Oh
well. You should have watched The Limey, RJ. It has Louie Guzman too.
I wanted to. I didn't have the time, man.
I know those axes aren't going to throw themselves.
Hey, I didn't ask to go to this thing, dude. You know I get drugged. I get brought along to things all the fucking time. It's not my fault. Dude.
After the break, Topher Grace is going to ask RJ if it's okay if he smokes some crack before he blows his load.
Do you, is this like freebasing? It's exactly freebasing.
He's the worst. I hate his face.
Who, Topher Grace or me?
Both. But
okay.
No, you know what's funny? Old Denny Quaid and Topher Grace are in a film together called In Good Company that I also saw in theater.
Isn't that movie that's like all about like dicks and stuff?
Probably.
Is that our podcast?
Probably.